Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Dustin Crace, and today we're going to do a game discussion, and we are going to talk about a game that every now and then there comes along a game that is the culmination of everything you wanted a certain series to be. It just brings everything together. It feels perfect, and it feels like the game you have wanted for 20 some years. That game that we're going to talk about today is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Wii U and the new Nintendo Switch. I picked up the Wii U version because I didn't really feel like dropping all that money for a Switch at the moment. Glad I did pick up the Wii U version because it sounds like the Switch is, I mean, unless you have Zelda, you don't really have anything to play for the Switch. So, you know, I might as well just get it for the system I already have. The game ran wonderfully on the Wii U, so I really didn't see the purpose of upgrading other than load times, because the Switch version's on a cartridge. The load times are a lot better than on the Wii U version. But regardless of that, this is the game I always wanted Zelda to be. This is the game that when I would go outside and pretend I was Link from Legend of Zelda with my little wooden sword, you know, when I was a little kid, this is the game that I had in my head. Everything, absolutely everything I ever wanted Zelda to be. The only problem for some people, my fiance, is that it does change the formula of Zelda quite a bit. She's not too jazzed on this one. She hasn't tried playing it yet, but she watched me play it. She's not too jazzed on it. But for the people that, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. For me personally, I shouldn't say for the people. For me personally, this is everything that I wanted Zelda to be. This is, without a doubt, one of the best games I have ever played in my life. How Nintendo is ever going to do another Zelda game, I don't know. If they were smart, they'd probably just let the series rest for a little bit, because this is like, I don't want to say it's like Ocarina of Time paradigm shifting, because Ocarina of Time was at a point in the history of video games where 3D was really coming into its, like, you know, the beginnings of 3D, and it really just blew the doors off what a 3D game could be. I don't feel like we can have a game like that anymore, Ocarina of Time. I don't feel like that kind of game, that paradigm shift of a game can exist. However, for a series that has been so traditional and so stuck in its own, I don't know, mythology, its own Zelda-ness, I guess, this does feel like a huge paradigm shift, even though it's basically doing what a few other games have already done. But because it's The Legend of Zelda, it just feels better. I don't know how to really describe that, other than the fact that I love the Zelda series, and I love the fact that Nintendo is now taking risks with the Zelda series, because it's been so traditional over the years. I mean, you could play Ocarina of Time and go straight to Skyward Sword, and there really wouldn't be that much of a, you know, that much of a shift. But going from even Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, it feels like a completely different series almost. And some people might say, oh, that's, you know, what? But for some reason, it still ties in everything that is Zelda. It still feels like Zelda, even though gameplay-wise, it feels more along the lines of Skyrim. It's really hard to describe, but there's just something so marvelous about it that I really struggle with putting it into words. I really struggle with talking about this game. Even when I was, you know, for weeks now, I've been talking to some of my friends about it, and we are all kind of struggling to kind of put into words Breath of the Wild. It's insane, especially if you've been with the series as long as I have, since the NES days. To to see something like this come out of a company like Nintendo that is so traditional with its series, it's kind of a mindfuck in a way. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it, and let's talk about it. Breath of the Wild. I have no idea where this falls into the Zelda chronology. If you've bought the Hyrule Historia, you know that there's a chronological order to the games, and there's a timeline split, and I have no idea where this game fits. The only thing that I think about, and I think about this in, you know, kind of how the overworld's laid out, the enemies you run across, and just the overall feeling of the game, I want to say that this is a remake of the first Legend of Zelda, and that this is the sort of the end of the timeline. I don't know if Nintendo has come out and said this. I haven't really looked into it, but for me personally, this game feels like a remake of the first Legend of Zelda. Because if you know something from the first Legend of Zelda, it's sort of at the end of the timeline. It's when the world's gone to shit, and basically you're kind of fighting for what's left. And when you get into the storyline of Breath of the Wild, Calamity Ganon has come. And Ganon in this game is a lot different from the Ganons in the other game, in that there's no Ganondorf, there's no really entity Ganon. It's more of this sort of malignant energy that just comes out of the world and it's more of a force of nature than a person with a plan and a plot. And for some reason, that just takes me back to the first game, where, you know, everything's shit. You know, this force of nature comes out, ruins the world. Zelda and her little team of guardians, or champions, I should say. Guardians are something different. Champions try to fight him off, and they just can't. And for 100 years, you know, Zelda is trapped within Hyrule Castle. Link is put into stasis in order to recharge, in order to fight Ganon once again. And that's where the game picks up. You wake up out of this little sarcophagus thing, and you march into the wide world. And when I say wide world, this game is Xenoblade big. Like, it's insane how big this world is. And again, how they do this on this horrifically underpowered system of the Wii U, I really don't know. Like, Nintendo, every now and then, Nintendo can just pull out some magic. And for everyone that bitches about how underpowered the Wii and the Wii U were, Nintendo was able to work some magic with those systems. I would be mind blown what they could do with something as powerful as like the PS4 or the Xbox One. In terms of the size of the game worlds, especially, you know, I don't know if Monolith Soft worked on this, but it does have that huge Xenoblade feel. But you walk out into this Hyrule that for once in a Zelda game actually feels like a real place. And that's one of the most impressive things about it. I finally feel like Hyrule is a real kingdom, because none of the other games really had the scale in order to sell you on that. I remember like Ocarina of Time, and you know, I was blown away by Ocarina of Time at the time, but Ocarina of Time at the time. But you know, you had Hyrule Castle, you had Hyrule Town, and then basically nothing else in the kingdom. You know, it never really felt like a real place. You had, you know, the Karaoke Village, or however you say it, the first village you start off on. I can't remember the actual name of it. And then you had the Gerdos out in the desert, but in the Gorons, but it never really felt like a unified kingdom. Much in the way that now in Breath of the Wild, Hyrule feels like a real place, and you walk around in the ruins of Hyrule, and there's a lot of games that I feel like this game takes from. I feel like walking around this game, I'm getting Skyrim, I'm getting Far Cry, I'm getting Dark Souls, and Zelda, all dashed together, mixed up, and made into this delicious meal. It's really, I feel like I'm rambling. And that's what this game does to me, is I feel like I just start rambling when I talk about it, because there's so much amazing stuff in it that I literally don't know where to start. And when I start with something, it tangents into something else. It tangents into something else because there's just so much in this game. I know I'm supposed to be talking about the storyline because that's how these game discussions are supposed to work. But oh my god, for the first time, I feel like Zelda's story has weight to it. I feel like there is real sadness, and some people, you know, will pull out Majora's Mask. And I agree, Majora's Mask has a really affecting storyline. The characters are really affecting. Link's Awakening is the same thing. For a Game Boy game, has a very affecting storyline. But there's something about watching the memories that you accumulate in this game, because Link awakes with no memories. He is completely, you know, has complete amnesia, can't remember almost anything. And as you move through the game and move through areas, you eventually start remembering what happened 100 years ago. And seeing the interactions with him and the other champions and Zelda, it's a really affecting storyline. And one of my favorite, absolute favorite cutscenes, and it was shown in the trailer for Breath of the Wild. And it kind of ruined it for the game because I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And when I eventually got to it, it didn't have the same heft that it did. But it's when Zelda collapses crying in Link's arms after failing. For some reason, that cutscene, especially when I saw it in the trailer, I knew we were in for something completely different. Because I never really felt like Zelda's stories had an emotional weight to it the same way like an RPG does, where you get really invested in these people and what happens to them happens to you too. And for some reason, that cutscene always, and still does, stick with me. Just the utter despair of Zelda at failing 100 years ago to stop Calamity Ganon. It really sticks with me. Meeting different characters in the towns, and a lot of the storylines with characters and like side quests and stuff, you'll visit the same characters over and over again sometimes, and you kind of get to see how things shift and change. And I guess, you know, Majora's Mask did that. You kind of followed people around for those 3 days and saw their lives and things like that. But I don't know, for some reason, this game, it just really, really stuck with me. I really thought that the storyline was really great. The interactions with all the NPCs and stuff was really great. My only complaint with the game, and this goes into the journey versus destination argument that you always have to have with yourself on these things, is that I felt like the ending for a game that was as massive and long and filled with just richness, I felt like the ending of the game was a little short. Like, it just wrapped up really quick. And maybe it's because I missed something in the game and there's a way to extend the ending of the game by finding something. I know I barely scratched the surface of the game, and I played for like, I don't know, 50, 60 hours or something like that. So I don't know, but I felt like the ending of the game just wrapped things up really fast. I was expecting like a big epic. I mean, the final boss battle is epic. It's a little maybe easy by the time you get to it and you're so powered up. But that's how these games work. You grind and you power yourself up to make these final boss battles easy. So, you know, that's not a complaint, you know. But, you know, I just felt like we were going to get like a big, epic, sweeping ending. And it's sort of a typical video game ending where, I mean, it's good. And it wraps things up nicely. But at the same time, it's like, okay, that was it? Okay. But that doesn't take away from the game. It's the, you know, do you judge a game because of the journey or because of the destination of an ending? The journey was fucking mind-blowing. You know, the ending's a little disappointing. You still had that massive amount of time that was mind-blowing. So it kind of goes back to that Mass Effect 3 debacle. You know, the ending was disappointing for some people, and some reason it ruined the entirety. I'm gonna knock things down being crazy like this. It ruined the entirety of the game for him, just because, and I don't get that, because, you know, the journey of playing that game was so great that if you were disappointed by the ending, it really shouldn't, you know, take it down too much. But it is there. The ending is a little short in my view. Gameplay wise, all right, let's go ahead and talk about this. This game completely throws out the Zelda playbook and starts sort of a new one. First and foremost, there are a massive, massive, massive amount of weapons in this game. Insane amount of weapons. And they are breakable. Almost every weapon is breakable in this game with various levels of durability. And you will constantly be swapping between weapons. Now, I've heard some people complain about this, but for me, it always kind of kept me on my toes. It always kept me feeling like, you know, I'm scavenging, that I'm, you know, in this world by myself. Because if I had a weapon that just never broke, I don't feel like I'd have the same amount of tension in the battles. Because you might have a really good sword that does a lot of damage, but it will break very quickly, and then you'll be stuck with some crappy, you know, moblin weapons, or, you know. So it makes you, especially in the early parts of the game, it makes you really kind of think more about how you want to engage enemies. You know, a lot of times the enemies are kind of in these little camps. They have explosive barrels around. You can fire arrows at them, blow the barrels up, deal massive damage to them, then go after them. One of the times I was fighting something, I climbed up on a hill. I used one of my bomb runes, which we'll talk about that in a minute. I threw a bomb down, and I waited for it to roll into their camp, and then I detonated it, blew them up, deal massive damage. There's a lot of different ways to approach battles in this game than just going in swinging. And the game with, you know, brewing potions and things like that to increase your attack and defense, it really wants you to think differently about fighting. So I can see if you're just kind of going in there to hack and slash, this is going to get really annoying because you're constantly going to be running out of good weapons, and you're constantly going to be stuck with like spears that do next to nothing. Or tree branches. But I personally really dug it. Once you get the Master Sword is not breakable, but it will lose power. So it varies between a 60, a 30, and a 0. So normally it's 30. If you're in certain areas with like dark energy or something, it'll power up to 60 to help you fight it. But then if you use it too much, it'll go down to 0 and need to recharge. 1 second. There we go. So even then, the Master Sword is not an infallible weapon. So weapons are breakable. Let's go ahead and talk about other ways that you can battle. Specifically the runes. Now, we're used to Zelda having a lot of dungeons. In each dungeon, we find a tool, and that tool is used for that dungeon, and then, you know, it becomes a very indispensable part of your repertoire. Thrown out the window. At the start of the game, you travel to different shrines, and in these shrines, you are gifted runes. There's bomb runes, there's magnet runes, stasis runes, a camera rune. I'm missing one, and oh, the cryonic rune. And all these things do various different things. You know, there's no boomerang rune. Boomerangs are just normal weapons now. But the bomb rune, you get a round bomb, you get a square bomb. Because physics is a big part of this game. And you'll want to use the square bombs to blow up walls and the round bombs to sort of fight enemies. The magnet rune, you know, kind of self-explanatory. You can grab metal objects with it. The cryonic rune makes frozen platforms in water. The camera rune takes pictures of things, which you can add to your sort of bestiary and item, you know, index and things like that by taking pictures of everything. You'll take a lot of pictures in this game. And then the stasis rune, it will stop moving objects. But the cool thing about the stasis rune is if you freeze an object and then attack it, you'll build up power, and then once the stasis rune lets go, it'll launch whatever item it is in the direction you're hitting it. So there's a lot of puzzles that involve that, and it took me a long time to figure that one out. I don't know why. Like, it just, I'd be sitting there going, how do I do this? And then I'll be like, I'll look online and be like, oh, the stasis rune, that's right. I can do that with the stasis rune. So remember that one. And you get these fairly early on. You can power them up a little bit, but there's no tools. There's no, like, you know, hook shot or, you know, boomerang or any of those other items that you carry around. You have a unlimited supply of bombs. You just have to wait for a recharge. Fantastic. I love it. Absolutely love it. So yeah, you have these. So you're saying, okay, well then what do I do in the dungeons? Well, there aren't really dungeons in this game. There are shrines, and there's hundreds of them. Maybe like 100 and some. And in these shrines are, you know, short little puzzles or short little combat maneuvers. Or some of them, you just get the item, you just get the spirit orb for just finding the damn thing. They're just scattered all over Hyrule. Short little puzzle dungeons, and at the end you get a spirit orb. When you get 4 spirit orbs, you can trade them in at a goddess statue for either a heart container or a stamina container. Yes, there is stamina in this game, and it burns quickly in the initial parts of the game. God, this is going to be such a long fucking video. You can climb any mountain, climb anything in this game, but it's going to burn your stamina. So increasing your stamina is important. I'm going to try to speed this up because we're going to be here all friggin' day. And I'm just talking to you about things that you can read about the game. I personally loved all the systems in it. I love the stasis thing. It really added some tension in climbing mountains and things like that. When it rains, it makes climbing harder. You know, there's different armors that you can buy and power up through fairy fountains. And the armors give you various abilities. It really pushes Zelda into the RPG realm. And I know there's been a huge, there's been a really big debate on whether Zelda is an RPG or not. Personally, I say why not? You're taking the role of a character in a game. You do have to power him up, not through grinding of levels, but through, you know, doing dungeons. You're still powering Link up with different weapons and items. It's not like Mario where you go through, you get power-ups, you lose power-ups, but you're basically the same as you start off as when you end the game. Zelda feels like a progression of a character, and a progression of a character says to me RPG, or at least RPG elements. But this game, I feel like this game really pushes Zelda into the RPG realm. There's a lot more commerce in this game. I'm constantly going to shops, buying things, upgrading things. The exploration feels more Zelda, or more RPG-esque. The whole thing just feels more like an RPG to me. The real world, the interactions with characters, you know, it just screams to me RPG. So maybe some of the earlier games we could say Zelda was not an RPG. I think with Breath of the Wild, Zelda really is starting to feel much more like an RPG. No levels, you don't level grind, but you know, you collect materials and you upgrade things, which is kind of like leveling in a way. But what else about the gameplay? No singular horse in this game. You tame wild horses, which is kind of awesome. There are 4 massive dungeons called the Divine Beasts. These are basically the dungeon itself is a massive puzzle. One big massive puzzle. And I was really impressed with how these 4 dungeons worked. But yeah, I don't want to belabor all the gameplay elements in this game, because really, just go play the fucking thing, you know? There's no reason not to play this game. I think everyone should play this game. I personally found the world to be wonderful to explore. The different systems, wonderful to, you know, figure out how to do it. On the whole, I found the game to just be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Graphic standpoint, it has this weird, sort of, not weird, it's not weird, it's cell shaded. It's got a cell shaded look. I really, really dug it. I think it fits perfectly for the series. The vistas that you see exploring this world, like some of them honestly will take your breath away. The world, no corners were cut in designing this game world. It's massive. but it's massive to the point where I don't want to say massive to the point, but it's massive, but you still see the amazing attention to detail in the environments. There's, much like Dark Souls, there's a story being told by the environments themselves. You come across a ruined farmhouse, you see a bunch of arrows sticking in it, you see a lone sword setting out in the field that's rusted, and instantly you assume that, you know, bandits came and attacked the farm, and the farmer had his last stand with his sword. He fell. The sword is still there. I mean, it just, nothing tells you this in the game. You just kind of put it together yourself. And there's all these different like throwbacks to the previous games. The layout of Hyrule itself is very reminiscent of Ocarina of Time when you look at the map. It really is just a big, massive love letter celebration of the series as a whole. And if it was the last Zelda game for, you know, a good few years, I'd be completely happy with that. There's so much more in this game to do. The music is few and far between, but when it comes in, it's got this very restrained piano score that I think fits the mood of the game perfectly. The voice acting, I thought was great. I had no problem with it. Some people are having problems with it because it seems like everyone just loves the bitch about shit nowadays. But yeah, at the end of the day, playing this game, I am still just in awe of it. And I think that's really the big thing here, is like, I'm so in awe of this game that I don't know what to talk about, where to start, where to finish. I really don't know. Long story short, play this. Absolutely play this. This is, without a doubt, in 10 years' time, this is going to be on near the top, if not at the top, of best games ever made, period. Like, it's that fucking good. It really is that good. I don't know what else to say about it. I really don't. And I'm getting so like tongue twisted and twisted on all the things in the game. Just go play it. Just go play it. There's such a sense of history with it and the world. The world feels real. The world feels dangerous. It's the first time Zelda's felt dangerous in a long time. It really is just a fantastic, fantastic game. I don't know how Nintendo's going to top it. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know what they could do with Zelda, because if they only thing they could do is just make the same game again but bigger, or they could go back to the tried and true Zelda stuff. But that seems like a massive step back. It's like when Ocarina of Time came out, and we all wanted a 2D Zelda, and we got another 2D Zelda, and it was amazing. We've got several 2D Zeldas, but Zelda was never able to really go back to what it was like before Ocarina of Time. And I don't think Zelda's ever going to be able to go back to what it was before Breath of the Wild. It's a paradigm shift for the series, and there's no going back. So, have I missed anything that I want to talk about this game before I sign off here? Have I missed anything? There's just so much to do in this game. I mean, you can literally just dick off in this game for hours and not get anything done. And it's still amazingly enjoyable. 10 out of 10. I mean, it really is a 10 out of 10 game. 10 out of 10 game. Just, there might be a few little gripes here and there about something or other, but it doesn't take away from the massive, massive accomplishment of what this game is. I'm playing Nier right now. I got Persona 5 sitting here to play after Nier. People are saying, Nier, Game of the Year contender. People are saying Persona 5, Game of the Year contender. I don't know what's going to beat Zelda. I really don't know if anything can beat Zelda. I don't know. But we're going to see. And we're going to find out. This is a good year for gaming. Wow, it's a good year for gaming. Anyway, guys, that is it for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. One of the best games ever made. Period. Don't knock on it because it's Nintendo. It's such a fucking cliche thing to do nowadays, to go, oh, it's a Nintendo game. This, without a doubt, knocks the teeth out of most, if not all, the games that have come out recently. So anyway, that is it for this game. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.